Hi Athens, this is Nan Michael. Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where anything can happen and usually does. And one of the things that are happening today is a visit with John Howell. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, Nan.
What are you bringing to us today?
Well, there are sort of three things that are on my mind, and I'll just tell you what they are, and then you can kind of pick as to which way we go in our conversation. One, of course, is the ongoing efforts for the charter, the county charter. And two is an effort that really Christine Hughes is putting forward out of a concern that we don't have enough people involved in local political activities. So you look at the primary ballots, and most of them are unopposed, and some of them are even vacant. So she's organizing a kind of a meeting of people to try to address this, and how can we get more people involved in local politics, and local politics is important to our community life.
Right.
So that's the second one. And the third one that we could talk about is related somewhat to the charter, but oftentimes we have, it's been pointed out to us that this issue of protecting the environment with regard to injection wells ought to be decided at the state level. And so there is an initiative that is beginning at the state level, and we could talk a bit about that.
But that's going to be more difficult, right?
Sure. State level initiatives always take more time, takes more education, and so on. But the local activities that are coming out of several counties now all essentially pave the way for that to grow into a statewide effort.
And this has to do with water?
Sure. The purpose of the county charter is, in effect, to preemptively protect the water supplies on the grounds that the injection of fracking waste into injection wells in the county ultimately is likely to cause problems with the water supply in the county, and the water supply is critical to our life.
Right.
So our interpretation of the fundamental principles of government is that we have a right to life, among other things. Then we have a right to those protections that essentially make life possible. And so what the county charter is really designed to do is to say no to the injection of any more fracking waste in the county into injection wells. In order to do that legally, what it does is incorporates what's called a Bill of Rights. That is to say, that spells out our perception of what we have as rights under this larger umbrella of the right to life that we have. For instance, the Ohio Constitution also specifies a right to safety. And so we argue that part of that right to life is the right to clean water, clean air, and uncontaminated soils. So that Bill of Rights then allows us to make the argument that that these changes that we are asking for are legitimate, even though the state at this point says no, they're not legitimate. So there is a conflict here, and we could talk about this for quite some time, about this issue of where these kinds of things ought to be decided, at what level of government. And it will certainly be different for different questions. But as far as questions of the rights of basic protections of life, for instance, it seems to us that the question of the protection of the right is central. Who's ever defending it, whether it's being defended at the federal level, state level, or local level, it's those defense of our rights that should take precedence. So that's a...
Is the governor a big stumbling block?
Well, yes, in the sense that he, under his administration, the Department of Natural Resources was given this unbridled authority and to determine everything about the siting of drilling operations, whether it's injection wells or fracking itself. So that has essentially enabled this for our own county, this business of the injection wells getting to a point that is threatening. So yes, he's in that sense been an enabler of that problem.
I think I read that there was a conflict of interest between the Department of Natural Resources, and they give their approval, but they're playing two roles.
That's right. The Department of Natural Resources has at least two roles, and one is to essentially facilitate the development of natural resources by the private sector for such things as mining and extraction of resources. So that is one of their tasks. And the other is environmental protection through their administration of parks and so on and this kind of thing. And so these two things, of course, have come into conflict with one another. And so far, what we've seen is the commitment of the Department of Natural Resources to resource extraction seems to have taken the upper hand in their actions.
Well, not really to change the subject, but it's in my head that I read that California farmers are now allowed to use water from fracking sources in their gardening, and I hope they label their food from California to know what to avoid.
Right. Well, this issue of food labeling is interesting because, as you probably remember, the state of Vermont a few years ago passed a bill that was strongly supported by its people, and the legislature and the governor signed it, that would require labeling in terms of dairy products that were from cows that had been treated with hormones. And the dairy industry nationally got on board in fighting that in court, and took it to court. And essentially what the court decided, unfortunately, was that that impinges somehow on the freedom of speech. In other words, they had the freedom of what not to say. They don't have to say that this is from cows that are treated in this way. So it essentially undercut the ability of the people of that state to get information about labeling of the very food that they're eating. So it's an uphill battle because it's clear that the big food producers, big agriculture, big food producers, don't want to be hampered in any way in terms of their sales. And so the idea of having to label things in a way that might cause people to hesitate to buy their products is not perceived by them to be in their interest.
Well, is the objection locally to fracking, is that primarily from people who own land?
Oh, no. The objection to fracking is from people...
Because, I mean, they could make money by...
Oh, yes. In terms of, there are... it's true that people who are landowners and see the opportunity for making money by letting people frack their land or put injection wells in their land, they again have an interest, financial interest, in opposing what we are trying to do. That's right. However, the proposal that we have in the county specifically bans injection wells, and injection wells are not they're not as lucrative for the landowner as drilling is per se, because
So you say injection wells versus fracking?
fracking itself. So fracking is taking the oil and gas out, but it produces this waste material that has to be gotten rid of, and that is gotten rid of by burying it in these wells that are referred to as injection wells, so deep below the surface. And the argument that the oil and gas people make is that it's safe down there and it won't move, and it won't contaminate the water table, the water layers, which are more superficial. But you could question that.
Right. And it has been questioned other places.
Right, right. There's a lot of evidence that that provides little security from water contamination. Simply from the argument that it's very well established now that injection wells tend to cause earthquakes, and that causes the earth to move, and if the earth is moving, it obviously is going to let fluid down there move, so it's not necessarily going to be trapped tightly. And there's plenty of evidence from that it just is increasing day by day, week by week, of essentially where there have been accidents and water has been contaminated by these fracking operations.
I wonder if Australia does fracking. I saw their continent had moved several feet in the last.
Well, there are other things contribute to earthquakes other than injection wells. Right. Right.
So Christine came up with a good idea to stir things up locally.
Right. Christine, of course, has been a long time advocate for protection of the environment, and so she's been working hard with many others in a group called ACFAN to, for instance, prevent fracking in the Wayne National Forest, which is partly in Athens County and partly in other counties. And what these people see, as just as many of the rest of us see, is that this kind of community effort to protect ourselves when there is failure to do so at higher levels of government requires involvement of a lot of people. And simply looking at the, I looked at the primary ballots. Let's see if I can find this. I have this somewhere in here. Oh yes, here it is. I looked at the primary ballots for this last election, and if you look on the Democratic ballot, out of 9 federal, state, legislative, and judicial issues, 4 were uncontested. 5 were contested. Okay. And for 2 of those offices, there were simply no valid petitions submitted. That is to say, there were no candidates on the Democratic side. And on the county, for county offices, out of 9 offices, 9 were uncontested.
Oh, really?
For the county offices. So we don't have other local people stepping up to give voters a choice.
Right, right.
And
So it shouldn't be that hard. Just I'll do it.
Right.
No one's going to fight.
Right, right. And likewise on the Republican side, it was similar. There were out of the 9 state, federal, legislative, and judicial offices, 7 were uncontested, for the 9 county offices, the Republicans did not put up a single candidate. So, which means that it's the Democrat will win in the primary, and they're uncontested. So, it's meaningless voting. If people aren't willing to speak up and say, no, I have these other ideas, in terms of how the county or city or should deal with these particular issues. And without that kind of interchange, in a sense, political debate, and we hope we can do them in a civilized way, but issues don't get explored. So we need more people involved, and I hope. Let me tell you that this meeting that Christine is organizing will be on August 25th at the Athens Community Center.
What day of the week is that?
August 25th is a Thursday, and it will be at 6 to 8 p.m., so early evening. Okay, Thursday, August 25th at the Athens Community Center. And she has already arranged for State Representative Debbie Phillips, County Commissioner Chris Smeal, and City Council person Jennifer Cochran to be there to do some discussions, answers, questions, and so on, to how to explore to get more people involved.
What kind of vacancies are they that you're talking about? City council or commissioners or?
No, there are no vacancies there on either of those bodies. The only thing that I picked up in looking at the primary was that on the Republican side, there are 2 slots for the State Central Committee. This is in, I just picked out one Athens ballot to look at. So on the Republican side, there were 2 slots for the State Central Committee, but both of which were contested, and that's good. And then on the Democratic side, let's see, there was no candidate that even spoke up for the County Central Committee. So there's a vacancy in terms of representation on the Central Committee. So that is a vacancy.
Well, I guess one of the problems is that so many people are shy or busy.
Both. Yeah.
And you're not shy, but you're sure busy.
Well, yes, and what we would also like to see is a younger generation, younger than you and me, to step forward to begin to take this kind of interest and leadership. But it is difficult for the generation that's hard at work and expected to do not just 40 hours a week, but often in the professions much more than that, and often raising families and so on, and then to find the time to do political work is asking a lot. But it's the kind of thing we need.
How much have we been able to involve students at OU?
That's a good question. And of course, I'm with the Democracy Over Corporations as coordinator of that organization. And we are working on that. We have a couple of young people that have gotten involved recently in their 20s. We've sent them both to a National Leadership Summit run by Move to Amend in Washington, D.C., where they learn some lobbying techniques. And Move to Amend, of course, is an organization that we're linked with, Democracy Over Corporations.
And what's the name of it?
Move to Amend.
Oh, yeah.
And their whole purpose is to try to move toward a constitutional amendment that says our human rights are for human persons only, and not for corporations, which are the creations and possessions of people. It's people that should have these rights.
Right.
And also to say that contributions, money contributions to political campaigns are not to be considered as speech protected by the First Amendment. That's necessary in order to be able to have any hope of getting back towards regulation of campaigns, of elections, so they aren't completely bought, as almost the case now.
Well, this year is a mess, this current election, and it's been fed into by corporations acting as people.
Right. I mean, even even if we had a constitutional amendment that simply said that corporations are not people and therefore are not protected by the First Amendment, and nevertheless, the wealthy who have made their wealth from the corporate world still have plenty of money to inject into the process, and that's why the second part of that constitutional amendment needs to be there, namely that money is not speech. And that's House Joint Resolution 48. It's been introduced into Congress, 21 co-signers, co-sponsors, and 17 states have now passed at the state legislature level resolutions supporting a constitutional amendment of that kind.
But not Ohio?
Not Ohio. And that's one of the efforts that we're interested in making. These two young people who came back from Washington have both been lobbying with a representative in Washington, Senator Steve Stivers, and in fact, they arranged a conversation that I was involved with Representative Stivers about this very issue, about whether he would be willing to essentially sign on as a co-sponsor to this House Joint Resolution 48. He had not been approached before by that. He had some questions which were legitimate. He's thinking about, are there any unintended consequences of this kind of thing? And that's an important question to ask. So it was a good conversation in which we were able to address some of those issues, and I'm hoping that he will be able to move in that direction. I think we need to keep the conversation going. There is one other Republican who has signed on as a co-sponsor in Congress, so I'm hoping that we can make some progress here.
Wow. Well, there are more organizations or people backing it. I see on the internet. Seems like every day there's somebody else speaking out against the United
Citizens United
Citizens
decision of the Supreme
United,
Court.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yes, I remember when I first heard that decision. It just struck me that the last shred of democracy, where people rule was being taken away, was being threatened, and it was that essentially got me interested in trying to start this organization, Democracy Over Corporations, in which we could kind of look into this, educate ourselves, and maybe start to make some noise.
Right, right. Well, I really appreciate your responding so quickly to my invitation. I'm sorry it was late, but I kind of started earlier in the week. And
Sure.
And I'm so glad that your computer got worked on
Right.
and fixed.
Right, I had to take it to my friends in the medical school since that's where I'm retired from, and they fixed it up for me.
Well, maybe you can come back soon and remind us about the date, which is August the
25th,
25th, which is on a Thursday.
6 to 8.
6 to 8 at the community center. Now, she said there were only 50 seats.
Yeah, I think, let's see, I've forgotten about that. She reserved the room.
So maybe people can come with their own chairs or something. I don't know. Is there a larger meeting room there?
I don't know which of the meeting rooms that she has arranged for at the community center. There are several different sizes depending on the petitions that separate the big room into littler rooms.
Well, hopefully they'll make room for all of us.
Right. Good.
And thank you so much.
It's always a pleasure, Nan. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you. Well, we just heard John Howell discuss the importance of local people running for public office. And this made me curious about how someone would decide to run for public office. So I'm asking Jeffrey Risner how an artist like himself became a city council member.
Well, that's a pretty good question. Several motives come to mind. At the time I was approached to run for council, I was semi-retired. I was doing some part-time teaching for Rio Grande, so I had free time. Mm-hmm. And I have always been involved in local politics all my life.
Mm-hmm. How?
Well, I got involved. My very first presidential campaign that I became involved with was John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon in 1960.
Wow.
I was a Kennedy supporter.
Of course.
Right. Well, my family has traditionally been New Deal Democrats, but on both sides of my family, both my dad and mother's. My father's family were originally from Kentucky, in the coal mining regions, eastern Kentucky. They were involved. Many of them were involved in unionizing the miners. Two of my cousins were assassinated by mine owners because they had attended a meeting to organize a union. It wasn't even a union meeting, okay? It was just to organize a union.
Oh, so they were assassinated
They
by
were by mine.
the company.
The company, yeah. They were on their way back from the meeting, and they were ambushed on the road, and they were shot. They found their bodies the next day along the road, and it was a warning to others. You know, hey, this is what's going to happen. You know, so that traditionally my family's been very pro-labor and Democrat, New Deal. You know, Roosevelt, Truman, and so on. So I got started that's in 1960. I've been about 9 years old, I guess, and all through school, high school, I was always been involved in both national and local.
How were you involved in high school?
Well, in high school, with our in our classes and things where you teach where they used to, I don't know if they teach civics anymore, but we were taught civics, and as part of that, it just seemed natural to volunteer to work in the local offices, in the Democrat Party offices, and help the local candidates, you know, run for auditor and city or county commissioner. Mainly the county offices were the big ones. Because I'm from Vinton County. MacArthur was just a village, a small place, you know, and had a small council and a mayor. And so the big center of politics for Vinton County is the county level. Those are the main offices, you know, to fill the courthouse and the commissioners. So I was always involved with that, and the trustees, of course, and so on. So I had several relatives who held various county offices at different times, you know, trustee and commissioner and so on. And I just became, you know, just something that I was always interested in doing.
That was Vinton County.
That was Vinton County. Mm-hmm. And then later, when I came over here to work in Athens County, I just naturally got involved with the local party here. Mainly that was back when Susan Gwynn was the chairwoman of the county party. We got involved there and just, you know, became more and more active within the party. But I never held an office. You know, I always sort of shied away from that because I had full-time jobs and things, and I just didn't really have the time. I thought. But then later, when I was approached by the then county chairman, Bill Bias, to fill a seat for city council here in the city of Athens, I thought about it and, you know, gave it some thought. And, well, I can't really say I don't have the time, because I do have the time. So, no, why not? I want to give it a shot. And I said, you know, as long as it's fun, I'll do it. So, and that's how I got involved. And I think I was probably about 59 at that time, and I thought, well, why not?
Did you electioneer?
Oh, did I campaign? Oh, sure. You know, I went door to door. You know, I had to get my petition signed. I had to, you know, introduce myself. I was already fairly well known in my neighborhood because my ward. This is a ward. City of Athens City Council has 7 members. 3 members are elected at large, which means the entire city votes for them. Then you have 4 seats that are in the wards. The city's divided into 4 parts, and 1 through 4, and I'm in Ward 2, the second ward, which is pretty much the south side where this building's standing right now here on Richland Avenue, going from the roundabout up, to the north of the, near the river, and then south this way, and then on both sides of the street. So it's large geographically. It may be the largest in terms of geographical area, and certainly one of the largest in terms of population. They try to split the wards so that they're equal in population, but people move around, students come and go. So
You might be mine. I'm on West Union.
well, West Union is would probably be the first ward. That would be Councilman Kemp Butler's ward. West Union would be. No, I don't think I'd touch any of Union.
Well, I would vote for you if you were
Well,
running.
thank you. I'd appreciate that. Yeah. But you can vote for me anyway. It just wouldn't be legal. Well, my name wouldn't even be on your ballot is the thing. You'd be going to a polling station. You're going to get a ballot, and it's going to say for first ward, Democrat candidate, Republican candidate, Libertarian, Conservative, Socialist, Libertarian, so
For the first time that I voted recently, they asked me if I wanted to vote Republican.
well, that'd be in a primary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Which
Yeah.
which ballot do you want? The primary. So primary elections, of course, are different than the general elections.
Yeah.
A primary election is an election within the party. Okay, that's what you're determining. That's why they say, do you want a Democrat ballot, a Republican ballot? Do you want a nonpartisan ballot? If another political party, say the Libertarians, could get enough support, they would have their own ballot. Do you want to vote Libertarian? But these are inter-party elections,
Yeah.
okay,
right.
which are very different than a general election. A general election is to put someone in office, which is a very serious matter.
Oh, yes.
A primary election is just within the party for the party to determine who they want to run to hold that office.
Right.
And I think a lot of people get those confused as if they're of equal value. They're not.
Well, people are kind of dense,
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
not up
Yeah.
on
No,
the latest.
I mean, in fact, primary elections are fairly recent invention in America. They came about the turn of probably around 1903 or 4, somewhere up in Wisconsin. I think they had their first primary. I mean, before that, the way parties picked candidates was either just a local meeting. What you would have had back in the old days, you would say, okay, Democrat Central Committee, Executive Committee, we're all going to meet. Okay, now, who wants to run for this office or that office? Well, I'd like to run for that. No, I'm sorry, Bill. This year's not it's not your turn. Okay, we're going to get Mary over here. Mary, you're going to run for that office. Is that okay with you? Oh, that's fine with me. Okay, all those in favor, Mary? And that's done. I mean, within 15 minutes, the whole thing had been taken care of. But now you go through this primary thing, where you spend thousands of dollars and you have to hire people at the polls.
Well, what are we going to do now with this encouragement of more people running for office if we've passed the primaries?
Well, I think, there's a couple issues on that when it comes to local elections, local candidates, trying to get qualified people. And by qualified, I mean people who are, obviously intelligent and concerned, that have an interest in that position, whatever it is, auditor or treasurer or commissioner or something, council person. They want to be interested in that, and they're qualified to do it. You want someone who's literate, who's aware of what's going on within their community and concerns and so on. But I also think there's something else you need, is you need people who have a passion for it, who really, really want to do that. And
Like you.
well, yeah, sometimes. And then who have the stamina. It takes a lot of energy to do that. Even, like the position of, say, county auditor, treasurer, commissioner, those are full-time jobs. I mean, you are there 8 in the morning and you don't leave until 5 in the evening, and you still take the job home with you. It's always with you. With city council now, that's considered a part-time position. We don't meet every day. We don't deal with issues every day, but it's surprising how much time it does take up. Normally, our council meetings last maybe 2.5 hours in the evening on a Monday. But there are other meetings and committees that you attend to get the background information that you need in order to understand, why are we passing this legislation? You have to know, why are we doing this? It's one thing for, say, the administration, say the mayor and his administration, say, well, I need a law to do this. Okay, now, am I going to take your word for that? Or am I your rubber stamp? You want a law? Okay, sure, I'll pass it. No, that doesn't work that way. I want to know the detail. Why do we need this? Well, when you open that can of worms up, now you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to attend those meetings with different officials, different employees, understand the issues. Why is it necessary to go through all this? And that really starts eating up your time. Now, you're still getting paid what you're getting paid, that part-time. So I think one of the difficulties that you have in getting people to run for some offices on the local level is that the compensation is so low that many people just shy away from it and say, well, I just don't have the time. I can't
afford
it.
it.
I can't afford to do it. I have to keep my other job, so make a living, support my family, and I don't have the extra time, the extra 10, 15 hours a week to put into serving on council or serving as an official without the compensation.
So that will limit the number of local people convinced to...
It does. What you get, and I'm not putting anyone down for the pool of people that we get, but for example, I'm a retiree. I'm pushing 65 now. I don't have as much energy as I used to have. I don't like to admit it, but I'm not the man that I was 20 years ago, or even 10. But and not everybody on council is at my age, but we do. Council does tend to get people who are older, okay, who have more free time because they're not working full time for whatever reason. And I would love to see more younger people come in, and I'm not just talking about. Occasionally, we have a student, a higher university student, who wants to be on council, and sometimes they get elected, and they do a good job, and they move on to other things. But that's a temporary thing for them. Okay, they're not going to be there that long. A couple years, maybe 2 years, 3 years, and they're gone. As soon as they graduate, they got that new job.
So how long is your term?
Our terms are 2 years, 2-year terms.
And
I've been there. This is my third term.
First year?
No, third.
Third.
So almost 6 years now.
So when do you come up to be voted?
Let's see, my next election will be 2017. We're an off year. Really off year. So our turnouts are pretty low.
Is it fun at all?
Oh, it can be. Yeah, I've had some good times with it. We get some. It can be dull. I mean, there is a lot of just work legislation that has to be passed. A lot of our legislation deals with appropriations. money comes in through some form of taxation, and then we have city services that need to be paid for, police, fire, recreation, so on. You just can't have someone write a check to each of these departments and say, okay, here, this is for salaries, and here's a check, and here's for a new fire truck or something. The law doesn't work that way. There's a long series of checks and balances that you go through, and usually you'll have a situation where a budget is proposed. Actually, the new budget cycle will begin probably at the end of this month. The administration will be calling all the departments and saying, okay, get your budget for 2017 together. You know how much you spent in 2016. What do you think you're going to need for 2017? Okay, so now they'll be putting a budget together, and those will be submitted to the mayor and his staff, and they'll go through it and go, well, gee, I don't know, that's a little high here, we'll just make some adjustments. And then by the last week in November, that budget proposal will be brought to council, and council will then read it. It'll go through several readings where we'll look at it and so on. Now, it's going to be a big, thick document. We'll be, have to go through all that.
Goodness.
So now you have monies that, okay, this is our budget. And then as the new year comes in, revenues will come in. But they don't come in all at once. They come in sort of by the quarter. If you're dealing with a city income taxes, which is where we get almost all of our revenue, comes from a city income tax. That comes in by the quarter. Different people will be paying different ways. They'll come in, and then it'll be distributed out according to the budget and so on. Well, as that money is coming in and it goes to different budgets, the council will then have to will have to vote to say, okay, yeah, that money goes here, or that money goes there, or I have money in one account, but I have to transfer it to another. Well, they just can't do that. Okay, it has to go through council. Council has to be aware of that. So it's kind of mundane. It's the kind of thing that there's no fireworks involved usually, unless it's something very controversial like, I don't know.
What did you say about fireworks?
Well, there's no real fireworks here.
Is there no?
No, not that.
Occasionally.
Occasionally. Most of our arguments, if you want to call an argument fireworks, occurs in committees. We have different committees that meet, and it's there that you argue about something. I mean, that's where you're really supposed to have your argument. By the time it gets up to council, where you're actually putting an ordinance on the floor to be voted on, most of that should already be done. There really shouldn't be any surprises left. Otherwise, your committee hasn't done a very good job.
What committee are you on?
Well, I'm on the Finance and Personnel Committee and Planning and Development.
Was that your idea?
To be there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was.
So you can't complain too much.
No, not at all. No, I enjoy that. It's fun. I get to see a lot of things, and I get to learn.
When John was talking about the vacant positions that people ought to run for, those positions sounded pretty blah.
Okay. Well, even blah is important. It has a purpose. Within the city, well, let's look at the different city positions. You have mayor. Okay, he's an elected official. When the mayor then appoints his staff, and that staff is extremely important. He appoints, hires and fires the city service safety director, the person who's in charge of the police and fire department and all the other departments. He hires and fires human resources, the city engineer.
Has that always been the case?
Oh, yeah. So that's a very important position. I mean, they serve, the code directors and so on, they all serve at his pleasure.
Well, I think John was not talking about getting appointed.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about uncontested positions where nobody wanted it.
Well, that's
Some of them,
Yeah.
or
Uh-huh.
unopposed.
Yeah. What most of the when you get to well, yeah, that is true. That does happen. But it depends upon the position. If you're dealing, say, with on the county level, where you have commissioners, okay, I don't know of a commissioner race that's ever been unopposed. There's always been someone from the other party wanting that seat. Same with the auditor, treasurer. Those are always contested. Now, where you may have a person running uncontested might be in a primary. You could easily have a case where, for whatever reason, no other person of that party decided to contest or go after that position. And that could be something just where people say, well, you know, I know that guy, he's done a pretty good job. And we're friends. I don't want to, you know, run against him. You know. I mean, that could be one reason why it's like that.
What can be expected from this meeting on the 25th?
Which meeting's that? I'm not sure.
Well, the Village Bakery.
Oh, that, yes. I think what could come out of that is one thing, let people know that these offices exist. A lot of people don't know what our political structure is. And they get confused about certain positions, like, you know, what does the commissioners do? What does the trustee do? What is why do we have these things, and so on. And the same thing on the city level. I think a lot of people don't know that we have a city treasurer. You know, we have an auditor, treasurer. Well, those are two completely separate offices. Different.
That's the city treasurer.
And also in the county.
I know about the county
Yeah.
because I got my tax.
Right.
But who's the city treasurer?
Well, that's Mary Ann McClure. She's our treasurer. And the treasurer's function is to take assets that the city brings in and invest those assets, put them in the right bank accounts and so on, so they draw,
Really?
yes, to draw interest so that they work for the city. I mean, the treasurer takes care of our treasury, okay? The auditor, that's where the money goes out. They keep track of where the money is being spent. Now, of course, money coming in, that's very important, but their main function is to know where that check, well, really, they cut the check, you know, and where it goes and who it goes to. They keep track. Yeah. And they do an extremely good job.
So some of the meeting at the community center will be educational,
Mm-hmm.
and some will be encouraging, trying to get people used to the idea of maybe running for office.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great thing to do. You know, the more hats you throw in the ring, the better. You need diversity. Now, sometimes it can be a real pain, you know, no question about it. But on the other hand, you get other ideas, other facts about things, opinions and viewpoints you never realized were there. You know, like, oh, that's a good idea. I never thought of that. Oh, well, I'm glad you thought of that. You know, I wouldn't have known that if that other person hadn't been there. So that's why it's really important to do that. It's, you know, we live in a democracy, but a democracy only works if people work with it. The problem that our Congress has right now is you have one political party who's decided, I don't want to cooperate anymore. That's the danger of democracy. All political systems have problems, and all have a fatal flaw that can be exploited. The fatal flaw in democracy comes from this. Democracy works if people participate. If they don't participate, it fails. If in a democracy like what we have, which is one model, you can have other kinds, we have basically a two-party system. Well, that means if one party fails to cooperate and says, I will not do that for whatever reason, the motive is irrelevant. They just simply sit down and say, I won't do anything, then it fails. It begins to fall apart. It can't function very well. So we have a democracy here. That's the way things work, and the more people that participate, the better it is.
It seems to me that we should have a law against adding things to bills. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Why
You mean amendments?
blatantly
Yeah.
add, like I guess the Republicans did for this mosquito thing,
Mhm.
you know? What's the point? It's just so obvious that it's politically motivated in a fightful way.
Right, right. Yeah, that's you're right. That's an issue. I don't see very much of that here in our city council.
Thank
You know,
goodness.
we don't do much of that. In fact, it's very seldom anyone really offers an amendment to change something once an ordinance has been introduced. There's been threats to do it, but that usually gets shot down pretty quick. But you're right with the Zika virus mosquito funding that was trying to get passed. You know, one way to kill a bill is you put an amendment to it that is just so odious that no one will vote for it. You know, and of course the point of it is that you make political hay with your constituents who support your extremist views. Somehow it gives you better job security, I guess.
Well, you're active in DOC, aren't you?
Oh yes, yeah, very much.
If we could get that overturned, we'd be a step ahead.
Well, one of our issues is there's just so much free money in the system right now that essentially congressmen are bribed. I mean that's
Congress what?
the congressmen, are just simply bribed. People come and say, okay, if you want to get reelected, you want to keep this job, you're going to need $4 or $5 million for your next campaign. Now, if you don't do what I say, you will not get that money. I will give you the money, but if you don't do what I say, you won't get it. I guarantee you'll be out of a job. Now, it's tragic, but that's the way the situation works. And when you had a extremist Supreme Court, like Anthony Scalia, who was the one who really led the thing, was you say that money is a form of speech, which makes no sense. I mean, no matter how you turn it.
Not to us.
No. Well, it never did before. I mean, in 230 years of the Republic, it never really was, but then suddenly it is. Well, the reason it became that is because, well, what do we have? We don't. The Republican Party did not have more voters, but they had more money, and you need to put more money into the system in order to game the system. And well, the result is now you have Donald Trump. There we are.
Well, I got the signal back there that we have 2 minutes.
Okay.
And
Well, if you want to sum up, my advice is that anyone who's interested in running for political office should get involved and say, I want to run. And the best way to do that, if you're part of an organized political party, is to let the leadership of those parties know that you're interested in that position. Because they're looking for qualified candidates too. They want to get someone in here.
I wonder how much the concern about losing stops people.
Well, I suppose no one wants to lose a race. No. And especially if it costs you time and effort and money to
Uh-huh.
to do that, and no one likes that, you know. But that's the chance you take. So
you got to be gutsy.
yeah. Well, I don't consider myself a particularly brave person, but on the other hand, if there's no risk, then there's no reward either.
So you wouldn't have been crushed.
Oh, I would have sulked, I think, for a while and felt sorry for myself. But like everything else, you get over it, I suppose. So.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
Oh, you're welcome. Pleasure to
Appreciate
be
it.
here.